This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome to Level 1, Lesson 3. And as always, everything that we're going to be talking about today is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. All right, so let's get into what we're going to be doing today. I know I have Tesla up, not something that I would typically trade, but sometimes you just get something that's so perfect that drawing the chart becomes a lot easier. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start our foundation of understanding how we actually draw a chart. So let's talk about what happened yesterday. So what did we learn yesterday? What are the variables to drawing a chart? Where do we start? And just give you a little bit of a hint. Yeah, I'm feeling so much better. I finally went to the doctor and they gave me a steroid and my cough's going away. Everything feels good. So I am ready to go. Volume is implied, but patterns are not. So what do we need no matter what in order to look at a stock? And this should be a given, but at the end of the day, sometimes we do forget because I know so many of you have sent me journals with trades that come into something that just doesn't have volume and you get caught up with those controlling prints. So that's why volume is so important. So we need to, volume has to be implied in order for us to be able to trade it, but volume patterns are not. Now, what makes it easier, consistent volume or volume patterns in order to actually draw our charts? Easy, patterns. Patterns are always going to be the easiest way to find something that's going to be happening soon because of the fact that they're showing us that if it's not going to stop trading and we go into a volume value or a volume dip, coming out of it is almost a guarantee. And when it comes out of it, it's going to give us so much information. Okay, our increments have to have our increments set. Calculations must be determined, which is going to go into what we're going to talk about in a second. But we need to know what our increments are. In order to draw a chart, every piece of information that we get out of our time and sales needs to be calculated. We have to understand what that person needs to be able to do in order for it to make sense for a trade. So we have to have our increments set to be able to actually create our calculations. And then our print personalities, we have three types, which we're going to be talking a lot about in the next few classes. So our first type is what? What is our first type of print personality? Controlling prints. We cannot draw a chart without having controlling prints because controlling prints are what's going to give us kind of the rough outline of exactly what that chart is going to look like. And then the rest is going to come in and really tell us how we should be drawing it before it actually happens. What's number two? So off level, we're going to talk about this in a second once we start to go into actually, drawing our chart. And I'm going to take everything away and we're going to bring up paint. Okay, but our off level really tell us time frame because we have to understand something. Controlling prints overall give us a story of what the stock is going to look like. Okay, but from what the stock is going to look like, we need to know time frames. That's where the off level comes in. And then what's number three? Yeah, our filler, our noise. Now, we're going to start to do something as we create our charts, as we're going to be drawing them, is we're going to get our controlling prints. It's going to give us overall what the stock needs to look like. We're going to have our off-level prints that are going to tell us essentially what our time frames are going to be, but then our filler. So we want to start to think about something as it comes down into actually being able to draw a chart. What are controlling prints versus the amount of off-level prints versus the amount of filler? So I want you to think about something. If we see that there's mainly off-level prints, what does that tell us about a stock? Check, check. Can everyone hear me loud and clear? Okay, not sure what just happened, but either way. All right, so let me get back to what I was talking about. So our three types. So when we have off level, just like we were just talking about, we're looking more north to south. So we want to start to understand the amount of the types of prints that are coming into a stock. Because if we have, let's say, mostly filler coming in, what does that tell us? If we have mostly filler prints that we're seeing, what does that tell us? Does that tell us that that stock can't be traded? So it doesn't necessarily mean float. And that's a common misconception that a lot of people have, is that when you see a lot of filler that's coming into a stock, you think that the chart is supposed to look a certain way. But what does it actually mean? What's the easiest way to draw a chart? A stock that has tons of information that matters, or a stock that only has a few things that actually matter? Yeah, a few. So just because we have a ton of filler in something, you'll notice this, especially a stock that has some type of news breakout. You'll see the stock running, and there's only a few grouping of prints that actually matter, that tell you exactly what the stock is going to do. So just because we have a ton of filler does not mean there's not people that are adamant about doing something. Because just think about it on the psychological aspect, you have a ton of filler prints. If I'm going to come in and do something, okay, and I'm going to show, some type of real entry, some type of real position coming in, how confident do I have to be? Extremely. I have to understand and know exactly what the stock. I'm going to be the person controlling the stock, because everyone else is coming out there and they're not really showing us anything. Versus a stock that shows tons of important prints. Is it harder to enter a stock that shows a ton of important stuff, or something that really shows nothing? Which one is the difficulty of trade there? Yeah, it's hard. It's way harder to understand all the important things than when something just has something that pops up. Okay, where we have all this filler coming in, but then all of a sudden you get a great prints at 72 or 63, or whatever the actual prints themselves are. So understanding how to draw a chart also comes into understanding where do our prints lie. Are we getting levels where we get great controlling prints, but no off-level prints? Are we getting a stock that has tons of off-level prints? Sort of okay controlling prints, not much filler. We want to start to understand those three brackets, okay, those three basically genres of the type of stock. We want to start to understand how it's happening. Okay, which one has the most? Are we getting more controlling prints? Are we getting more off-level prints? Are we getting more filler prints? Because as long as we have the volume and movement, we can make a trade out of it. But it's understanding those variables that are coming into it. Because at the end of the day, if I take all three of those and understand the amount of controlling prints compared to the amount of off-level prints compared to the amount of filler prints, what does that now teach me? I'm actually learning something, but what category does it fall into? What am I learning about that stock by understanding the amounts of those three things? So definitely intentions of market makers. There we go. Personality. It gives us the personality of what the stock is looking to do. So a lot of times when we look for personality, where do we look? We look at the chart. Because not for nothing, what's the best way to learn what a stock did? Well, look at the chart. That's exactly what happened, and that's the exact way that it moved. But when we look at the chart, does it actually give us substance? Do we really get substance when we look at a chart? None. We have zero substance. Because a great move down, like we could look here in Tesla right now from 161.50 all the way back down to 157.50. That bar Does that bar necessarily have to have selling in it? Now, logically, percentage-wise, probably does, but does it have to? And the answer is no, because stocks can move based off orders alone. They don't even need to make an execution to move what the price of a stock is going to be. So if we're sitting there looking at the chart for personality, and don't get me wrong, it's a great tool to use in a sense, but those three categories are actually what's going to teach us what the personality of the stock is. Okay? An exception stock, because we have to start breaking it down into categories. So we have stocks that follow the rules, right? If a stock follows the rules, do we really need any information? We get our controlling prints, follows its calculations, does exactly what it's supposed to. Do we really need much there? Or can we just follow that based off calculations? Our calcs. It's just doing exactly what it's telling you it's going to do. But now, if we see that off level is the heavy side of printing within a stock, what does that tell us? What does that tell us about the print, about the personality? So a lot more north to south, but doesn't that give us the ability to understand that most of what's going to happen is going to be an exception? So I want you to start putting this as a mindset. So minimal pullbacks. So if the pullback says 50 cents, is a 30-cent pullback still a high percentage on something that's giving us overall off-level prints? It is. So how many times have you missed a trade because it only pulled back 30 cents when it was supposed to pull back 50 cents? But were you thinking, where did it fall into this category? So remember, our controlling prints give us a blueprint. Okay, but anyone that's ever built something before, well, if you have my skills in building things, do you always follow the blueprint exactly? Not really, because there's something here that you might see. You know, the blueprint's the overall. This is what it has to look like. It's the guideline. There you go. It's the guidelines. Okay, but the rest of understanding these prints is what's going to allow us to understand where it deviates. Because stocks don't just go up and down. We get great ask prints at 161.50 and it tells us that it needs to go to 157.50. That's not always just what the chart's going to look like, unless it's just all controlling prints. If the controlling prints are really the guideline and we don't have much of the off level, there's always going to be filler. This is something that we do need to understand. There's always going to be filler. Why? Understanding, what the market is. Why is there always going to be filler? Because not everyone's a market maker. Definitely a right answer, but not exactly. What does it mean to be a market maker? Such a simple thing. What's the definition of a market maker? Yep, 100 on the bid, 100 on the ask. Okay, so no matter what, is there going to be trading going on? The reason they're market makers is to provide liquidity within the market to be able to actually trade these things. So no matter what, there's always going to be at least 100 shares or 100 bids going off at all times. So we're always going to have filler. But when we understand something, if a stock is moving north to south and it has the volatility and we want to trade it and it's mostly filler, it actually makes our lives easier because when someone does come in with those off-level or controlling prints, the difficulty of trade is so much higher. Right? So these are the things that as we go in, it's not just seeing prints coming in off level and just analyzing those. Now, that's a great start. That's how you become a good trader. But to become a great trader, really what it comes down to is understanding the differences between these three categories, between understanding the amount of controlling prints that are going on, our off-level prints, and the filler. It's going to help us and give us the ability to really know what should be happening or what should happen before it actually does. Remember, the prints come first, the chart moves afterwards. All right, so let's get into things now. So I want to draw a chart. What do I need? Where do we start? I'm going to get rid of that chart first. Why am I going to leave these two charts up from what I'm looking for first? There you go. Increments. Do I need to work on doing increments? Is there any special talent that I need to have? Just look. What's Tesla trading in? Fitties. Amazon. What's Amazon trading in? Weird day for Amazon, by the way. 10 cents. Now, let's talk about something. If I'm going to trade Amazon and it's trading in 10-cent increments, am I going to trade Amazon? Hell no. There's way too much of a store. There's way too much that goes on. Stock like Amazon should not be trading in such small increments, but it is. It's just not a day to look at it. Based off what I've seen so far this morning, there's some good trades that have been out there, that just like always, but there's a lot of, looks like Fed hesitation coming in, even though that they know that they're going to hinder rates, but that's for a different story. So I need controlling prints. So what we need to do right now is we need to go out there and we need to scan and see what do we have. Okay, I'm not going to use Tesla because we've already most people have already looked at it. Okay, and I kind of know what the story is going to be. So I'm going to look for something that has brand new controlling prints because that's the only way that I can start. I cannot draw a chart because when I start with my original chart, and this is something that we have to understand, let's say the prints say the stock is going to do this. Okay, that's what the controlling prints say. Is that really just what's going to happen? Can I expect it just to do this based off those controlling prints? What do we think? Yes or no? Can I expect the stock to do that? I do have paint up. Can you guys not see? Weird. I don't know why GoToMeeting's giving me all these hassles today. Let's see something. All right, what about now? Okay. All right, so can I expect a stock off controlling prints that shows that it's going to go up, forget the increments, forget everything else, to just go straight up and then come straight down? Can I expect that? I can't. Can I expect that overall? Yes, I can. So overall, this is what the chart's going to look like. But if we were to add another color in here, what it's actually going to look like is something like this. Okay, and I'm just making things up right now because we don't have the prints, but it's going to look something like this. But it's not going to be perfect. Does filler matter to what I need to draw a chart? Is my filler going to do anything in my ability to determine what the chart is going to look like? So the answer is yes. So it's not going to actually affect what the chart is going to do, but what it actually does is it puts more emphasis on prints that matter. Okay, filler doesn't just, well, I mean, it exists obviously, but filler isn't something that that tells us what a chart's going to do or what's actually going to happen, but it gives more emphasis to what we see coming in. So if there's a ton of filler and controlling prints and off-level prints are very hard to come by, what does it mean when I get off-level prints or controlling prints within that stock? If filler is the most, it takes out of those three categories, it gives us the most. They hold so much more weight. So even if it's at print personality, because most of the time, if you're going to have filler that and overwhelming filler that comes into these stocks, you're not going to see a lot of off-level bursts and controlling print bursts. So when we do see them, if it tells us one increment, what does it actually mean? Where do we start from there? This is where a lot of us get caught up with trying to understand, because at the end of the day, if print personality is 3, increments are 50 cents, and we get 3 prints, how much should it move? How much should the pullback be? 50 cents. Right on point with one increment. I don't care what the increment is, it's one increment. But if it's all filler and I get at print personality when print personality doesn't really exist within controlling prints and off-level prints, does it mean more? So when someone comes in and gives me 3 ask prints at a controlling level, even though the print personality being 3 tells us it should be one increment, should it be one increment or should it be more than one increment? Exactly, more, because the difficulty of trades there. So when we go back to talking about the tip of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg here is showing us something that looks common, but it's not. So even though filler doesn't give us any real idea of what the stock is going to do, it holds a ton of weight in understanding and being able to comprehend what you're actually seeing. So we start with those controlling prints, but the controlling prints calculations is the most important part of being able to draw any type of chart. If we don't have those, you see this black line that's sitting right there. That's what it needs to look like. Now, we know it's not going to look that way. It's not going to just be perfect up and then straight down. Every once in a while you'll get that, but I can't go into my day thinking, okay, I see controlling prints. This is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to, just look at Tesla alone. Okay. Even as I mean, this is pretty clean, but even as it's coming down, you could see there's still going to be ups and downs that come within there. Okay, but understanding these 3 categories is going to just drastically change the way that we see things coming in. So let's go out there right now and let's look for some controlling prints. RNA just came back out, and I know it's a little bit of a slower day. Yeah, no, I see RNA coming to 20, but it has nothing underneath. All right, but this is a perfect example. I want you to look at this time in sales right here. Because if we come up to a stock, is it worth me going through to see what the hundreds mean and these burst? Is there any point to going through the entire time in sales? I don't understand why. You guys still see paint right now? Hmm. Now you should probably see LI, right? Go-to meeting is not doing me well this morning. Okay, we gotta get rid of that. Okay, we should see RNA right now. Okay. When I click on it, can you see my mouse and everything? Said I'm not sure what the hell's going on with GoToMeeting, but okay, beautiful. All right, so coming into RNA, we're coming up to 20, we can see, but one of the biggest things, so what looking at regular time and sales is not going to help us to understand what the stock is really doing on the market maker side. And that's where we need to start. Why do we need to start on the market maker side? Because we need controlling prints to be able to do anything. But when we look at this, okay, and we scroll back and we see everything that's going on right now. Okay, let's classify what we have. So controlling prints. If you had to give controlling prints 1 through 10, so you're giving it a score 1 through 10, what would it be? What would it be? What are our controlling prints from 19? I mean, pretty much almost zero. Looking at this point, our controlling prints are absolute garbage. Okay, what about our off-level prints? If you had to score it, because these are the things that need to start going through your mind in order to really see what the chart looks like. D. I mean, one or two, I'm not going to really argue with that, but do we see much? Not really at all. So what does this stock mostly have? It's got filler prints. So what does that tell us when if we're going to draw this chart, when we get some type of burst of either controlling prints or off-level prints, what does that tell us about that person? They're going to be easier to draw, adamant. They're going to stand out. They're dominant. They're the one that's controlling it. Okay, by far, they're the person that's going to actually be out there and controlling it. So when we look at it right now, it's trading in dollar increments. So when we get something, let's say print personality is what? 2, give or take, based off what we see. So if we get 3 prints at 20, how big of a pullback do they need? Is a dollar pullback enough? If I was going to be drawing that chart, 3 ask prints at 20, would 19 be where I needed to pull back to? No. So if there's a trigger at 1911, is that a high percentage trade? No, not at all. We have to be able to take those 3. So this move up appears hollow. Can you draw a chart that for short trade, or would that be more of a feeler trade? So at the end of the day, I wasn't watching. I would need to know what the actual prints are, because the stock's not just going up this high off of anything. It's just taking a little amount of that tip of that iceberg in order to create it. So there's got to be something that stands out that comes up. Otherwise, then guess what? Then, I mean, I wouldn't call it hollow. And the reason I wouldn't call it hollow is because of what? Why wouldn't I call this a hollow move? Even though the prints, the substance, exactly, there's too much volume. There's a ton of volume on this range. The volume matches what this move looks like. So there's a difference between being hollow and having a lack of substance. Because filler prints, at the end of the day, do they actually mean something? Yeah, of course they do. To somebody, I just don't know what they mean. I can't figure out what all of this means right here. It could be bid, it could be ask. I mean, I can kind of take a guess, but something like this right here, see this 1980? That doesn't look like a lot, does it? But that's huge in comparison because of understanding our print personalities between controlling, off level, and filler. So 1980, you got to think about something like this. Typically, controlling prints are at what levels? Controlling prints are typically at what levels? So 0, 25, 50, 75. Okay, 25 and 75 aren't going to hold as much weight, but still work in that same sense. Okay, so understanding that these 80s, maybe that was where the best order was going to be. We're not always going to see in a stock that's moving with this big of a range and moving this much, we're not always going to be able to see it happen at a 19, at a 20, because it's just not available. So when they see the ability to come in at 1980, they're going to have to take what they can get, what's actually available. And in this situation, 1980 moves us to what point? Let's think of our calculations for a second. 1980 moves us to what point? Not 2030. 2080. Easy calculation, right? Okay. Print personalities 1 to 2. We get prints at 1980 at 2. Two prints at 1980. What's the stock need to go to now? One increment. No. Just talked about this. Why is one increment not enough? And I could sit here and ride on my high horse and say, yeah, 2080, that's where it's got to go. But nope, it's got to go more. Think about this. This would be one increment on a normal stock. But what is actually controlling this stock? Is it controlling prints? Is it off-level prints? Or the correct answer, which is our filler prints. 90% of the stock's being controlled by filler prints. So even though we see 1980 and it looks like it's at print personality, is it really at print personality? Now, at the end of the day, the way we're going to trade it is how? Are we going to trade it for more than one increment, or are we going to trade it at one increment? Of course, because we're going to be conservative forever. That's how we trade. Stock moves an extra couple dollars, doesn't matter when you already made a few dollars. Okay, it all adds up. But coming into the 2080, even though it hit it perfect first time and then pulled back down, am I afraid of this trade stopping? So if I was to bring back paint right now, and we see this stock that's moving like this, where's my mouse? Here we go. So I see it moving like this, and it's going up, and I see 2080 get hit right here. Okay, and the stock starts to pull back from it. Where does my chart go overall? I don't know why, like it's not sharing my screen. Yeah, paint's supposed to be there. Go to, you're killing me. You should be able to see paint now. Okay, so I see this stock that's coming up like this. Okay, and that X right there, okay, is that 2080 point, excuse me. That's where it hits. I know that the chart is going to react off that point. But overall, as the stock is coming back down, do I have the ability to come back up above here? I do. But what do I need? Because even though that puzzle fits, so new info, but yeah, I need to see something. I need something at 20. I need something to come into here. Even though we have that possibility now of this coming back up here, I need something, some type of buying. But I know as this chart is pulling back, any point I get buying, okay, here, I get buying here, I get buying anywhere as that's coming back down, I have now the ability to break over just from those 1980 prints. So my chart needs to look like that. So as I'm sitting here and I'm watching it kind of just pull back, okay, I know that I have the ability to do this, but I need this. Do you see what I mean? So as we're drawing the chart, we have to understand what our possibilities are going to be. And right now, what the prints are actually saying, because we haven't seen anything that really changes that, is that the stock gets to come back. But we do need to see somebody actually coming in. Because if no one comes in, this is what the chart looks like. And again, in my head, if nobody comes in, what's the chart going to look like? It's going to be another push above 20, and then it's going to come back down because it's not going to be able to sustain itself. Drawing a chart isn't just a static variable. There's things that go on. There's things that tell us what need to happen, and then we need to get our supporting actors in there. We need support that's showing us the ability to actually be able to do it. Now, we haven't got anything great, and I'm going to try to pull paint away. Hopefully it works, and I don't think it did, so let's share again. I would apologize, but there's nothing I could do. That's annoying. Okay. Can everyone see my mouse screen? That's not the right one. Okay, this should be it. Can we see my mouse? Everything. It looks like it's lagging. I don't know what's going on today. Okay, but either way, so coming into it, I have to be able to understand. So what happens when we're at this point now in RNA and we're seeing the prints that we're seeing? Anyone seeing anyone coming back from 1980 that has changed anything? Nothing, right? So if there's nothing, do we go higher than 2180? So if again, I'm going to try to bring in paint and hopefully, no. Okay. So as I'm watching this and I see that there's two options now. Can everyone see the black that I'm writing right now? I just want to make sure. Okay. So there's two options. Okay. We know we have the ability to be up here. Okay. Based off those 2180 because we know that there's more. So now we need to see some type of buying. If we don't have buying and we just see a mix of nonsense, our chart's going to look something like this. Okay. Are there trades to be taken in this spot based off of what we've seen? No. But you might ask yourself, well, I know where it needs to go. So shouldn't I anticipate? Shouldn't I jump the gun? Shouldn't I do all the things that traders shouldn't do? Not until we get back to right what we were talking about before, buying. We need to see some type of buying that's coming into this area to get here. So we know what the chart can look like. And that's the biggest point that I'm trying to make right now is that a chart is constantly changing minute to minute because that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a minute chart. All right, so we know what the possibilities of that chart are, but from knowing those possibilities, we know what we need to see in those areas. Knowing what should happen versus having a trade, and that's a huge part. But we have to know every aspect because charts are going to get to a spot, and this comes down to something that a lot of traders have a hard time understanding is that do we always know everything? Does the information that we're provided always tell us everything that's going to happen? Absolutely not. If we go into our day and think that, we're screwed. Because I know what the maximum possibility is. I know what it takes to get to that maximum possibility. So when I see that, there's when a trade comes in. Versus what we're seeing right now is just this kind of back and forth and back and forth. That's why our chart was going to look like this. But one of the things that we have to bring back is our number one. What's our number one always when we're looking at a stock and on trying to understand what it's going to do? Not controlling, Prince. That's actually number 3. Volume. Okay, when I come back and I look at this volume, can you guys see my? Ugh. I'm sorry, I have to keep doing this, but okay, when I come back over here and I look, what was the deciding factor? They were 86 prints, I believe. Okay, so right here, mostly filler within this stock, correct? So we know print personalities actually means more than print personality. So when these prints came in at 1986 and we see this, does that not match the intentions of what those 80s showed us should be more than one increment? Think about that. So we don't need a ton to be able to understand that max. We just need something to come in. But if we just took out filler and we didn't use filler, because coming back to our volume, look how high this volume is. Is this stock going to stop trading right this second? If we go into a volume dip or a volume valley, can we expect this stock to just stop trading? And the answer is absolutely not because of how much volume there is. So if volume wasn't going to give us more, then those 86 prints wouldn't mean much whatsoever. In comparison to what we just saw, it breaking over the top. So now you're talking about another, 43 cents above. So we knew that the chart was going to look in that consolidated way, but we knew what our maximum was. All we needed was to add the off level. But how many of us look at a stock that has mostly filler and it scares us versus understanding how to interpret what the actual prints that are coming out from mostly that filler? There's something else that you need to think about as well as you're coming in, especially with a trade like this. When you have mostly filler, the duration of time that you can expect to be in your trade, should it be long or short? A long period of time or a short period of time? It's got to be short. Why does it have to be short? Someone can come take it over easily. Okay. Not really. I mean, yes, you're absolutely correct, but that's not the real reason. I want you to think about something. When there's one person that's really showing you anything in a stock, what happens once they make their money? Do you think they're like me and like, scale out easily so they don't hurt people in their chat room? No. Once volume starts to go away, we'll come back to where it began. Well, to, that's on something that's hollow. But again, this is not a hollow move because there's too much volume. That filler means something. But you have to understand is that if you don't break it into these categories, filler might look like something that looks hollow, but it's not. There's too much volume here to be hollow. But the thing it comes back down to is that the fact once they make their money, if you're following one person, if you have multiple market makers, you have multiple spots to almost correct yourself when they're getting out. If you have one market maker that's bringing the stock up, the second that they make their money, what do? They don't give a shit about you anymore. They're going to take it away. So when we don't have continuation prints and I'm drawing my chart to the upside, once it hits that spot, what can I expect now for my chart to look like? And tomorrow we're going to actually draw live every one of these charts as it's happening. Okay, but we need to understand the theory. That's what level one is for, is to kind of ease you into the mindset that you need to have. Okay, but it's going to legitimately push up. Oh, God. At this point, it's literally going to push up and come back down. No more part for me to be able to be involved in a long trade. But when I get to that point, what can I look for? If I know that's what the chart needs to look like, what can I be ready for? Yeah, I could be ready to short this. Because again, 86, there were two prints. Now that person has a lot of control because of the amount of filler. But once they make their money, that's it. They're out. Is it a hard thing to see two prints come out of a stock? No, but guess what? You don't even need to. There's no reason to even need to see those two prints come out because they could be doing it through filler. Okay, filler is, and again, just to give you kind of a definition of what filler is it's just they're in between prints. They're prints that just don't mean anything. They're just all over the place. But when I know that this is the situation, once it hits that spot and I start drawing my chart back straight down, how do I fit my trade within that chart? And obviously, it's going short. So what I'm looking for is to get right around the spot that it needs to hit. So remember, we needed one increment. Okay, that was 1980 to 2080. Okay, we made another 40 cents. Is 1.5 increments fit this puzzle? Does 1.5 increments from that 1980 fit this puzzle? Hell yes, it does. What else do we have underneath it? 20. We all know about the 20 level. So when we're coming and we hit what we're supposed to hit, our chart now goes straight down. And if our chart's going straight down, you better have an order ready for a short. And look at this. You're talking about hitting its highs at that 21.23, didn't hit 21.25, and beautiful push towards that downside. I know I'm still on paint. All right, but this is the way that our mindset is going to have to work throughout these next 2 weeks. We have to understand that when something in order to draw a chart, if a chart looks like it's going to go straight down at some point, we got to be ready to short. If it's going to go straight up at a point. See, we want to get away from this. This is what we want to get away from. We want to find charts that show us this or this. Because at the end of the day, what's our main goal? RNA went almost exactly $1.50 increments, and now it's sinking. And did anyone just hear the Fox News alarm go off after we just said that? But overall, did it not fit exactly what the chart showed? Exactly what we just talked about. Because if this was a stock that had mostly controlling prints and off level prints, would that have meant the same thing? Not even close. But because we understood our three print personality types and we understood it was all filler, how much did that actually mean at 80 and 86? Now, a 6 cent difference, it's still the same. It's still going to be that $1.50. But look, we know exactly what was going to happen. We know the chart goes like this, and it goes like this, it goes like this, and we are going to go into that consolidation. But because it was the filler, that 80 needed to be more than one increment. Pushed up the $1.50. After that $1.50, did we get any continuation? Was there any continuation? Absolutely nothing. So what do I do with my mouse right now? What's the stock going to look like? Down. What's my price target? Right here. Has to be. Yeah, we go. 20. Was that a hard thing to be able to do, even though the prints are weak? But understanding that there was filler there when we get those few prints, do you see how it controlled everything that went on? Okay, when this pushed up, I could have just ended it and said one increment, okay, we're done. We went from 1980 to 2080. Perfect. But was that the real case in drawing the chart? Based off of the information we knew, based off understanding the three types of print personalities. It wasn't. And what happened? We get that after this crazy consolidation, we get that move back up. And as we spoke about, duration of time I can expect to be in a trade following two prints from one person that's controlling a stock with this big of a range. How long can I expect that trade to happen? Short term. So we got our short-term trade, and I'm going to have to move pane and do this whole thing over again. No, that's not it. You're making this hard for me today. Okay, here we go. All right, so when we look at it, guess what? We get our push to that max. Remember where that X was, okay, in our paint where we knew what the possibility for it to be. And then, boom, short-term trade, right back. So I want you to think about something. The whole point of being able to draw a chart is for you to be able to implement your trade within what the chart is going to look like. Would I try to trade this long from under 20? Now, before when we knew it had more room above the 2080 high, would I want to trade that to the upside? Because there's a bunch of room there. If you look at it, our low, I don't know what the hell's going on with my computer today, but our low is sitting right around, 1970. So 1970 to 2123, I mean, that looks pretty good, right? No, it's not a trade. Absolutely not. So the 86, but why would I try to take a short-term trade to the upside that the potential is unknown versus it hitting its calculation to take the larger trade to the downside? A 2-minute trade is not easy. You have to execute flawlessly in order to really hit what it's going to do versus take the slow road right back down to where it needs to go. Because again, the guy at 86, once they're out, that's it. There's nobody else coming. Why would I say that? Why would I think there's no one else coming? Why would I say that there's no one else coming? Because there's mainly filter, have to assume that, that's the personality. So definitely has to do with the personality, but guess what? If there was going to be someone else coming, would they only have hit 2 prints? Or would they have tried to hit 86, 83, 89, and tried to get more shares? That's all that was there. If that's all that's there, that's all that it can go. That's it. So there was no one else coming because they showed us there was no one else coming. Otherwise, they would have been doing it from 1910 to 1920 to 1930 to 1940. We would have seen more of that, and we saw none of that. Someone came in and said, I'm going to make a bunch of money real quick, and that's going to be it. So I'm not going to try to take that trade knowing what that market maker's game plan is. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to take the whole other side of it. And as you can see, what was the most beneficial trade from everything we've talked out? Would it have been to try to take that over for an extra 42 cents, or would it have made sense to allow it to get to the exact spot it showed us? Know in our head the chart needs to go straight down after that and then take that. Because when most people look at RNA right now, or when they were looking at it before, all they thought in their mind was this stock is going to keep going, it's going to keep going, it's going to keep going. But they don't calculate like us. They don't know how to draw a chart like we do. Because if you knew how to draw the chart, thinking the stock, yes, the stock had to keep going up, but that's not a trade. The trade was taking it back down because there was no one else that was going to be coming. And guess what? If someone did come, perfect. So then we'll find a new trade within it. If this stock is going to go to 25, are we going to find another trade in it? Yeah. So guess what? I'll change my game plan up. But from at that point, not seeing them build coming into there, we knew exactly what the chart's going to look like. Okay. We knew 2080 wasn't the top before. After it even hit 2080 and pulled back down, we knew it wasn't the top because we understand how to read our prints. And if we understand how to read our prints, life is good. We can fit everything we need into it. One person might be, I made 40 cents on the long. Well, that's great. I made $3 on the short. Which one would you rather wait for? There we go. All right, guys, any questions? I apologize. I don't know what's going on with GoToMeeting, but again, I don't have any control over that. But do we understand the mindset now? What are our 3 print personalities? Controlling prints, off-level, filler. If there's way more controlling prints, the stock will act more as a rule. Way more off-level prints, stock's going to act as a exception. And filler, way more filler than anything, when we get either controlling prints or off level, hold so much more weight. Difference between saying 2080 was the high versus 2150. 2125. See the difference here? All right, guys. I will talk to everyone in the chat class at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Happy trading.